Hey guys, LevelCap here. Today we're going to be doing a weapon review on the CZ-805 in Battlefield 4. This is an assault rifle. It's available for the assault class only, and it's an interesting weapon. It's brand new to the Battlefield 4 series, or the Battlefield series, and I remember during the trailers and the previews for this game, everybody was trying to figure out what weapon this was because it seemed to be one of the only guns that they were showing in the demo of the game. We could not figure it out for the longest time, and finally somebody pointed out that it was a gun made by the Czech Republic, and here it is in Battlefield. It hasn't been used too much since the launch of the game, partially due to the rate of fire. I fear it just can't compete with some of the more powerful weapons out there like the AEK. And when it comes to weapon balance and weapon performance, when people use assault rifles, they either want something that's going to absolutely decimate in close quarters or going to be extremely accurate for long range. Now, unfortunately, on paper, the CZ-805 doesn't seem to impress in any particular category. It just seems to be kind of your average 700 round per minute rate of fire weapon that isn't going to knock your socks off. However, when tap firing weapons, and this is like firing 1 to 2 round bursts very quickly, it's very accurate at long range. The recoil is low enough to the point where you can tap fire and maintain your crosshair on your opponents, and you can actually dish out quite a bit of damage at extreme ranges that a lot of players aren't expecting you to be able to dish out as much damage. Especially if you start aiming for the head, you can down people faster than you're expecting it. Now, I'm not quite doing that so much in the gameplay here. I hadn't quite figured out tap firing this weapon was a really good way to go, but I do figure it out after a few rounds of gaming with the gun, and all of a sudden I start wrecking people at medium to longer distances. Now, tap firing is a skill that you definitely have to get used to. It's much easier to just hold down the trigger and try and compensate for recoil, but some weapons just simply aren't meant for that. And there's multiple ways to look at a gun. I mean, you can look at it simply on paper, but sometimes you really got to take it out in the field. You got to try tap firing, you got to try firing it in different ways with different attachments, and you might find some things about a weapon that you just didn't notice from the on-paper stats about it. Now, at no point is the CZ-805 going to be a competitive level gun. It just doesn't shoot fast enough, and if you practice long enough with some of the higher rate of fire weapons out there, you can achieve accuracy that's almost on par with this one at longer ranges, and that's going to allow you again to down your opponents quicker. But there is something certainly to be said for a weapon that has a 700 round per minute rate of fire and decent long range accuracy. It can be very useful for dealing with multiple opponents. You definitely don't want to waste too much ammo on one player, and that is an issue that you always run into with extremely high rate of fire weapons like the FAMAS. You end up burning through most of your magazine on just one target and usually don't have enough bullets left over to deal with a second enemy. Now let's take a look at some of the stats from Simthic.com. As I mentioned before, it's got that 700 round per minute rate of fire, not the slowest out there. The slowest belongs to the SAR-21, which shoots at 600 rounds per minute. The damage model is pretty standard for an assault rifle, 25 max, 18 minimum. This means you can 4-shot somebody in close quarters, and at the maximum 6-shot somebody at extreme long range. The reload time for this gun is a little bit unfortunate, and I would love them to make it quicker for balancing purposes, but there is a reason for it that has to do with the actual real-life design of this weapon. Now, the M4, the M16, guns that have extreme short reloads in this game, have a mag release button that is accessible by the trigger finger. So the right hand, or if you're shooting right-handed, you can just hit that button for a quick mag swap, and the magazine will literally fall out of the gun. You don't need a second hand to actually remove the magazine from the gun. This way, your left hand, or the hand that you're loading the weapon with, all it has to do is grab a magazine and put it in the weapon. Now, with the CZ-805, it works much like an AK, where there's a mag release lever next to the magazine, and the only way to get the magazine out of the gun is to use your loading hand to hit that lever, pull the magazine out of the weapon, and then put in a new magazine. So rather than being able to use two hands to reload the weapon, you're essentially using one hand to remove the magazine and that same hand to put another magazine back in. I know it's a little technical, but for realism's sake and trying to get the reload time somewhat accurate, this does make sense for the CZ-805. It's just unfortunate because it's not backed up by other stats in the game to potentially make it a little bit more competitive. Now, delving into the technicalities of the reload process on this this weapon, we could potentially speed it up in real life based on the way the animation process is working. Now, the animation in game shows the hand come up, you take the mag out, then the hand disappears and it grabs another mag and puts it in the gun. A faster reloading technique that is a real reloading technique is to grab the reload magazine, put it next to the magazine you're about to pull out of the gun, pull the lever, and then just move your hand over slightly and put the new one in while still holding the old magazine. This can shave fractions of a second off of your reload time, and for a video game's sake, it would be cool if DICE started to integrate some of the more advanced reload tactics into some of the AK or the Czech Republic weapons. Alas, we are stuck with the 2.35 second reload and a 2.9 second long reload. When it comes to the recoil of this weapon, we actually have pretty decent weapon recoil. It reminds me a lot of the M16 from Battlefield 3. It's a hard pull to the right and a very soft pull on the left, which makes recoil compensation very easy. The vertical recoil multiplier seems a little bit high, but your first shot recoil is relatively low, so the gun isn't going to kick too much. Some people might suggest putting a heavy barrel on here. I personally like using something like the flash hider, and this basically doesn't affect the trajectory of my shot very much, but it will hide that muzzle flash. Then you can use something like a stubby grip on here. I was using an ergo grip for quite a while, but stubby grip will give you slightly better concentrated bullet grouping, and there you can see I just unlocked it right there, and that was actually allowing me to deal with targets at further ranges even better than I was able to before. Now, generally I recommend a red dot sight of any kind, whichever one you prefer. I like the Cobra sight just because of the intensity of the targeting reticle in the center of it, and it also provides sort of a minimal housing around there so I don't lose my targets around the side of the sight. But I would say that with some of these lower RPM assault rifles or just weapons in general, that you may want to try experimenting with a 3 or 4 times magnification sight. I've been trying it out a little bit and it's been fun. You have to make sure that you don't have intense recoil, and if you start to find that your screen's jostling around too much and you're losing your targets, that you might want to go back to the red dot sight. And you may even decide that you want to run something like an angled foregrip to reduce your first shot recoil to help you track your targets better if you are using a magnified sight. But the CZ-805 and some of the other slow firing weapons can definitely take advantage of something like an ACOG. Everything else with the gun seems to be pretty average. As far as the aiming down sight accuracy goes, it's 0.2, which is basic for an assault rifle. The hip fire is 3, which again is pretty basic. The bullet velocity is 580 meters per second, which certainly isn't very fast, so although it can be decent for hitting targets at long range, you're going to have to lead a tiny bit for moving targets. Overall, I would recommend trying out the CZ-805 and especially trying the tap fire mode, not burst fire, but tap fire, so the 1 to 2 round burst, basically to down your targets at range. You might be surprised at how accurate this weapon can be, and especially once you start aiming for the head with that kind of accuracy. As always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. This is LevelCap, signing off.